Yeah, subscribe to the channel. The last time, Veronica looked in the mirror and then looked at the clock. It was time to run because she promised Larry to come earlier and help in the kitchen. Veronica was in anticipation and very nervous because today her acquaintance with Kirill, her colleague and husband, and her friend was to take place. It was for this reason that she spent as much as 4 hours choosing clothes, having overused her wardrobe and her hairstyle. She wanted to be indescribable, and she liked the result. She had been alone for 3 years. After a failed marriage, new relationships never happened. Of course, there were fans, but no one was attached. She wanted love, passion, emotions. Kirill seemed to her quite an interesting man. Of course, it's hard to judge by the photo and not to drink water from the face, because the main thing, as they say, is that a person should be good with a sense of humor and charisma. And Kirill turned out to be exactly like that. And Lera said that he was exactly the one who needed Veronica. Veronica met Lera years ago, and despite the age difference, Lera was years older. They became very close. The new girlfriend then only moved with her husband, year-old son, and year-old daughter to an apartment located in the neighborhood with Veronica Paradna. Light, cheerful Lera became a very close person to Veronica during these years. And years ago, their family acquired 3-room apartments in the new district and safely moved there. Since then, girlfriends have begun to see each other much less often. And today, Lera turned. Time flies, thought Veronica, and sighed. She's already, and recently she was, at years old. She already had 2 children, and Veronica had none at. Her parents already asked her when she was going to make her grandchildren happy. The topic was sick. She really wanted to become a mother. But what to do if the husband turned out to be a great disappointment in her life and was not going to give birth to the first child? You do not like it, said her school friend Tanya. You are too much of a scum to men. I'm not scum, answered Veronica. Just no one likes it. You can't force yourself. So you need to look closely, meat. And you immediately cut the corn, no. And that's it. So if I don't like it right away, what time should I waste? But it happens that at first I don't like it, but I talked to him, got to know him better, and liked it. Yeah, they pull into the bed right after the first date, and I can't do that. They're not interested in wasting time on care. There is such a thing, of course, but let's hope that with this Kirill, everything will grow together. She said, and I hope, oh Tanya, I want so much passion, love, that my heart would jump out of my chest when I look at it, and the earth would leave under my feet. Passion is today and tomorrow is not, and love is something calmer, more comfortable, warm, without hurricanes. And you can't go far with one passion, and you need to create a family. You need to choose a man with a healthy mind, not in a rush of passions. The main thing is that he loves, cares, that everything is for the family. Don't tell me you and Yaroslav have no passion at all? Asked Veronica's friend, who had been married for years. We are all calm, without storms and hurricanes. Full style, and I like it so much. We have already come to each other, and I feel comfortable with him. Veronica was driving a taxi and thought that Tanya was probably right. What hurricanes are already in years? Maybe you really need a quiet harbor and a full silence? In minutes, Veronica was already at the door of her friend's apartment. The door was opened by her daughter, Lera Alice. Come on in, Lera shouted from the kitchen, and Veronica hurried to help her friend. Cucumbers and sausages. While you cut it, she asked. Where is the husband? Veronica asked, throwing the sliced cucumbers in the salad bowl. I went to the store. As always, in this mess, you will definitely forget to buy something. I didn't tell you what gift my son made me today. Lera smiled happily. He'll come to my birthday today. Wow! I asked my friend Veronica because her son, having graduated from the capital city university, stayed there to work. No, not at all. Their branch is opening in St. Petersburg, and he moved here. This is the best gift. I miss him so much. Yes, he has a girlfriend here. So he is coming here, said Alice to his mother. Well, good. Oh, how time flies, sighed Lera. Look at my son, Jinya. I'll become a grandmother, and I'm still 18. Yes, time flies fast, agreed with her friend Veronica. Alice, what kind of girl is that? Lera looked at her daughter. I have no idea. Maybe today will bring, so we will see, she answered. Suddenly the doorbell rang, and Veronica suddenly jostled. She thought it was Kirill, and the excitement for the upcoming meeting increased. Elisa, open the door. My hands are dirty, said Lera to her daughter. Dima, a joyful scream in the corridor was heard, and Lera immediately ran to meet her son, wiping her hands off the apron. Wow, Veronica exclaimed when Dima entered the kitchen. The boy grew up, huh? Smiling, she asked Lera. Not the word. It's the last time Dimas saw her. Veronica thought, remembering how old he was in the last meeting with Lera. 7 years ago, he said, Hello, Veronica. You haven't changed at all. But you are not the word how you changed, said Veronica, looking at a tall, beautiful man. I remember you as a 12-year-old boy. I haven't been him for a long time, Dimas said with a smile. Do you need help? No, son, sit down. We have almost finished everything, said Lera, stroking her son on the back. Why did you come without a bride? Asked his Veronica. And you immediately give the bride, answered he without stopping to smile. And I would bring you. I met with the parents, Lera said. Another time. And where is the father, by the way? He went to the store? He should be back soon, replied his mother. How is life? He asked Veronica, sitting on the stool. Great. She lied and again began to look at Dima. I still can't believe it's you. I see I've amazed you, he replied, without taking her eyes away. Then the front door opened, and on the door came the mousetrap, Vitalik. He happily said, looking at his son, and he hurried to hug his father. Having taken from his husband a package of food, Lera returned to the kitchen. Veronica, Vitalik called Kirill. He won't come today. His mother is sick. He went to the hospital with her. So, another time. Well, what to do? Another time. Veronica sighed. Her mood immediately deteriorated. Following Vitalik, guests began to approach one after another, and soon everyone sat down at a large table in the room. Veronica felt that her head began to spin a little. After a few, she drank a toast in the name of a glass of wine. Why don't you drink anything? She asked Dima, sitting next to him. I'm behind the wheel, he answered. And for a long time, without hiding the surprise, she asked, Yes, it's been 5 years already. Veronica, wakeu. I'm already years old. Not or, he said with a smile on his face. Yes, I know. She made a few more sips of wine. How did he become? She suddenly thought, constantly looking at her son's girlfriend. In general, even when she saw him for the last time before today's meeting, he was also very fine. But there was a boy, and now a real man, who probably has no girls, and as wide as his shoulders. She barely resisted the desire to hold his hand. How nice it was to her that he was holding her tightly behind his waist, slightly pressing her to his body. She didn't want this dance to end. She heard a little purified blows from his heart, his light breathing barely touching her hair. Veronica suddenly shook her head, scared of their thoughts and wishing to drive them out of their consciousness. Oh, Lord, what am I thinking about? As if awoken from the slumber, she suddenly thought, Is everything all right? Asked Dima, seeing this gesture. She raised her eyes, and their glances met. In his gaze there was something like this, from which she seemed to hit the current, and shivers ran through the whole body. Who were looking at her with Having sat down at the table again, she emptied the full glass of wine she had just poured. You seem to have decided to get drunk today, said Dima, sitting next to him. The evening after, she didn't drink a drop of alcohol anymore, and by the end of the feast, Veronica finally woke up, which she was happy about. Dima will bring you home, said Lera when Veronica began to get ready to go home. He will still live in our former apartment, so you can go on your way. That's all that was missing, thought Veronica. They will also be neighbors. I've been giving you the berries for 2 weeks already. I'll put a lot of them in the freezer, so take them all at least. Lera always brought a lot of berries from the cottage and shared them with her friend. Veronica baked excellent pies with them, which were simply loved by all her friends and relatives. Veronica went down with Dima. Sit down, he said, opening the door to his car. Thank you, she answered, sitting next to the driver. Dima turned on the music, and they talked all the way, remembering different moments from the past. Veronica felt somehow awkward next to him. She had a confusion in her soul, and some inexplicable tremble. I'll probably come for the berries later, she said when they drove up to the house. Veronica looked at the clock. It was already o'clock in the night. There was silence around, and only in some windows of their house the light was burning, slightly illuminating the darkness around. It's not long, said Dima. Let's go, and I'll help you get to the apartment. Okay, said Veronica. A few minutes later, they entered the apartment, in which Veronica used to be a frequent guest. She looked around and smiled, remembering those times. Their Slav was sitting in the kitchen, and that boy, who was now turned into such a beautiful man. Come in, said Dima, slightly hugging her waist and directing her to the kitchen. Veronica again felt the tremor in her whole body from his touch, and tried to remove his hand. But barely she touched his fingers, as in one moment she was in Dima's arms. She was confused, without expecting such a maneuver from his side. Her heart became madly pounding. She looked him in the eye and, as if lost her speech for a while. What are you doing? Let go. She barely spoke, a little remembered, and tried to break out of his hands. But he only pressed Veronica harder to himself, and immediately his lips touched her lips. It was not a hurricane, but a hurricane, tsunami, and earthquake at the same time. So no one has ever kissed her, and she had a few men all her life. Veronica didn't think about anything anymore. Her brain completely turned off. She didn't want him to stop at all, answering with wild passion for every kiss and touch of Dima. Veronica woke up and saw that Dima was still sleeping. She was lying on her side with her back to him, and his hand firmly pressed her to her body. Carefully removing her, she quietly got up, afraid that he might wake up, and, grabbing her things, began to dress up on the go. Like a mouse, she jumped out of the apartment and ran to the elevator. Her face was steaming. Veronica was terribly ashamed. How could I? She whispered. Fool, fool, fool. Who noticed her friend and waved her hand. Where are you from? She asked, coming to the stage of Veronica in which she once lived. Tanya, let's go faster, said Veronica. Is someone chasing you? Why are you so angry? Tanya asked, coming to the stage, following her friend. No. Why are you so early here? Veronica looked at the clock. It was 8 o'clock in the morning. I woke up early and decided to come over right away to feed my cat. Will you come over to me? I will. I hope nothing terrible happened to you because you are not at all like that. Oh, Tanya, I did such a stupid thing. Veronica opened the door of the apartment, inviting her friend to come in. The women were at the table in the kitchen. Well, I'm all in attention. Tanya looked closely at Veronica. Let's drink. Suddenly she said, I'm actually driving, and it's AM. If only coffee. Veronica turned on the coffee maker and sat at the table opposite her friend. Tanya, I slept with Dima, she said and closed her face with her hands. But finally you slept with someone. Great news. Smiling, Tanya said, great. With Dima, Lera's son. After a deep breath, Veronica said and looked at her friend again, with a smile on her face, and she acquired a thoughtful expression. Wow, she finally said. How did it happen? He brought me home, I went into his apartment for berries, and then he kissed me, and then everything was like in a fog. But did you like it? Tanya smiled again and shook her head, surprised her friends. Tanya? What Tanya? How old is he now? 25. Tanya whistled. Oh, time flies. An adult man already. Did you take the berries? Are you kidding? I now feel like a pervert. He was 12 when we met with Lera. I remember how often we went for a walk with Lera, Alice, and Dima, how we went to their dacha. He was always a child of my friend. I have right in front of my eyes Dima, when he was that boy. But now the boy has grown up, you are a woman, he is a man, and there is nothing so extreme in what happened to you. How will I look into Lera's eyes now? But you didn't rape him. You both did it on mutual desire. It's not easier. Veronica sighed heavily. So the hurricane was? Tanya smiled again. There was an apocalypse. Tanya, I've never had such a thing. Remembering this night, Veronica felt how the goosebumps ran through her whole body again. Listen, it was good and good. Don't make yourself so. I can't go back anyway. It was a huge mistake. And he will live with the neighbor now. I just don't understand. Where is Kirill? He couldn't come. Maybe he doesn't need it anymore? Tanya almost laughed. It's not funny. What should I do now? Don't do anything. Don't get so carried away. I want to fall through the ground from shame. And the worst thing is that I have goosebumps in my eyes that night. What if something happens to him? Are you crazy? Veronica looked at her friend with amazement. I'm even older than him by years. Not. And you look much younger. It doesn't matter. It was a huge mistake, and it won't happen again. I'd rather get to know Kirill. Look for yourself. Veronica, any Paraziviush so strong. Не побесхи дже Дима сам Лери скари разказват. Сето с тобой пореспал. А у тебя 3 года не било никого, а тут маладо и красивый мужчина. Here you're Popula. Polakila Udavlstv I Hirosho. Yes, by on не byl synom tvojej podrugy, ty by tak nereagirovala. Pa idu ja kata karmit. Da ishi vila jest. Tanya Podladilla Podrugu Poplechu I Napravila's Kadviri. Veronica lay on the bed. She couldn't get out of her head that night, and thoughts about Dima. And most of all, she was scared that she wanted to repeat everything again. After some time, Veronica fell asleep, but not for long. He woke her up, knocked on the doorbell. Her heart was beating in her chest. She was sure it was Dima. She came to the door and looked into her eyes. It was him. Veronica decided to open the door because it's stupid to hide and it's better to explain now than to pull back later. Hello, said Dima, entering the apartment. In his hands he held a big bag. You forgot the berries. He put the bag on the floor. Why did you run away? A smile played on his lips. He took a step forward and Veronica immediately backed up. She didn't run away, but left. Dima, we made a big mistake, but it will not happen again. I was drunk. Let's forget everything as if nothing happened, she said in a serious tone. Mistake? And you were not drunk? He took a few steps forward, and Veronica did not have time to remember how her body was pressed against the wall. We are adults, he said in a close look into her eyes, and she saw in them the desire that she had last night. And I don't consider it a mistake. I want you, and you want me. So why refuse from what we both want? I don't want you. She lied, and she didn't have time to say anything like that when Dima leaned against her lips, and Veronica again turned off from reality, which again took her by force more than the day before. Veronica felt how her heart was beating so fast, and her heart literally jumped out of her chest. He poked his nose into her hair, continuing to squeeze her tightly in her arms, and she, grabbing his neck with her hands, squeezed his cheek, slightly wet from the sweat of his chest. The breath in both of them was heavy and short-lived. And in the corridor, near the wall, in her own apartment, I'm definitely completely crazy, Veronica thought, and immediately moved away from Dima. And he smiled and slightly kissed her in the lips. Do you want to go to the shower? He whispered. Veronica nodded, and he, taking her by the hand, went there with her. She could not tear her eyes off his naked body, on the muscles sticking out on her hands, and with difficulty subdued the desire to touch him again. "You need to repeat this," said Dima, nodding to Veronica. "I'm talking about what we just did in the corridor." "You don't need to repeat anything," she immediately answered. "Don't come anymore. And if I come, won't you let me in?" He surprisingly raised his eyebrows. "I won't let you in. Wipe yourself and leave." He came out of the bath and took out the towel and began to wipe. And Veronica immediately pulled the curtain all the way to her length so as not to see him, and he did not look at her. "Give me a towel, such a big purple one," she asked Dima. "Well, why did you hide? I've already seen all your charms." He laughed a little, stretching her towel. Veronica also began to wipe right in the bathroom. "You are so embarrassed that I am the son of your girlfriend?" Suddenly he asked. "Of course I am embarrassed. I know you since you were years old," Veronica replied, scolding herself again for her proven weakness. "Don't think about it. After all, now I'm completely different. I can't help thinking about it. We don't need to meet anymore." Dima stretched her hand. "Come on, come out." Veronica hardly got out of the bath, wrapped in a towel from head to toe. "You liked everything, didn't you? And don't deny it," he said. "And why complicate your life at all because of stupid prejudices?" Veronica was unhappy to look at him and headed to the corridor. She really wanted Dima to leave her apartment as soon as possible. "Please dress up and leave," she said to him. "Children's garden, Veronica, don't be offended. Think as you want, I don't care." When Dima fully dressed up, he hugged Veronica again, and she began to resist. "Do you understand or not?" She almost screamed. "I don't want this." But as if not hearing her, he kissed her again in the lips, and her resistance quickly stopped. "Here you see," he whispered, touching her forehead. "Do you want?" She whispered in response, and he kissed her again. "And now?" "Dima, please stop." She literally prayed. "I have things to do, and I have to run, but I will come in the evening." Without letting Veronica out of the abyss, he said, "I also have things to do, and I'm leaving in the evening." She lied. "And where?" "At the date." "Let me go." Dima opened his hands, and Veronica immediately moved away from him. Without saying a word, he left her apartment. Veronica came to the window. She saw him leaving the house and heading to her car, which he left the yard in a few minutes. After a short breath, she went to the kitchen and turned on the kettle. Her phone rang immediately. It was Lera. "Hello. Did you take the berries?" "I took it. Thank you," she replied, redder. "Next time when you come to us, you will have your signature pie." "Good," said Veronica, although she did not want to go to Lera anymore. She could not imagine how she would look at him. Dima should go to the apartment today to see. Lera continued the conversation. "We will sell what is in your house. He wants to take more new buildings." "Exactly, my son is going to get married." "Oh, Veronica, how glad I am that he moved back to St. Petersburg." "And when is the bride going to show you?" he never said, asked Veronica. She suddenly remembered that Alice was talking about this on her mother's birthday, and she became even more confused. "Not yet." After talking a little more time with Lera, Veronica poured, as she called her phone again. This time it was Tanya. "How are you? Are you okay?" she asked Veronica. If only she had breathed there. "Dima didn't appear after your stormy night. He appeared, brought the berries." "Oh, and we had everything again." After breathing, Veronica said, after which she heard a laugh in the phone. "And I'm not funny at all. I'm sorry. You said it was a mistake, that it was no longer a no. It only took a few hours, and you managed to go with him again." Having agreed, Tanya laughed again. "I kicked him out and asked him not to come anymore, because he wanted to come in the evening. Maybe it's in vain? Let him come in," Tanya said, not stopping laughing. "Not in vain. And stop laughing at me." "Oh, I can't." "Do you want advice?" "And what is it?" "Relax and just live. Do what your soul desires, and don't get bored." Are you now saying that it's worth continuing all this with Dima? And why not if you want it? Get rid of the habit of cutting everything to the root. Thanks for the advice. I'll go and finally have breakfast. Otherwise, at this time, everyone usually has lunch, and I haven't eaten since morning. Bon appétit. See you later. She woke up only at p.m. She got up from her bed and came up to the window. Dima's car was already parked in the yard in the same place where he left today, leaving her. Having prepared a light dinner, Veronica lay on the couch and turned on the TV. She constantly thought about Dima and what was going on between them, remembering every touch of his and every kiss. She looked at the clock and suddenly understood that she is very much waiting for him to come. She wanted this, even though she was ashamed to confess to herself in this. When the clock hands showed midnight, Veronica realized that Dima would definitely not come, and this upset her. She began to regret that she lied to him about a date. But then her mind screamed that she did everything right and would no longer allow passions to take over common sense. Veronica opened Lera's contact page and started looking for Dima in her friend's house. He didn't have many photos, and almost all of them were at some events where there were a lot of people. It was difficult to determine if he had a girlfriend or not. At work, there was a complete collapse, and Veronica finally managed to get away from the unwanted thoughts about Dima. Before entering the parlor, she looked at the place where his car was parked yesterday. She wasn't there. You don't care. You have to forget everything, she said to herself and hurried home. Having prepared dinner, she lay down in front of the TV, turning on another melodrama. When the door rang, Veronica froze, and the heart began to beat again. Having got up from the sofa, she came up to the door and looked into the eye. It was Dima. Having already gathered to turn the lock to open the door, she suddenly, as if remembering, took her hand off it. No, she said to herself, gathering with thoughts, and leaned back to the door. The second and third call were given, but Veronica firmly decided that she would not open it because otherwise everything would repeat, and she did not need it at all. After a while, she heard his moving steps and looked again into the eyes. There was no one near the door. Every evening before the weekend, Veronica sat by the window for several hours, waiting for Dima's car to appear on the horizon. And every time with a calm heart, she waited for him to come out of it. Breathing with relief, she saw that he had come alone. Lera called on Thursday and invited her friend to visit, asking her not to forget to grab her own brand pie, because finally a long-awaited meeting with Kirill will take place. Despite the fact that she was terribly ashamed of her friend, she still agreed, because this meeting could change her life. Veronica really wanted to believe that Kirill was exactly the one she needed. Kirill is already here. After that, she whispered, "The pie needs to be heated a little. It will be tastier," answered Veronica. "But we are not going to drink tea yet. Let's finally get acquainted." Lera put the pie on the table in the kitchen and took her friend to the room where Vitalik and Kirill had a lively conversation. And then Veronica came. "Meet Kirill." The man turned his head, and then he got up from his seat and approached the women. "Very nice," he said, smiling kindly. "Me too," answered Veronica, smiling in response. "Well, I'm asking for a table," said Lera's guests. The atmosphere was light and not forced. They talked on different topics, and Kirill turned out to be a good interlocutor, not deprived of a sense of humor. He certainly did not have such a bright appearance as Dima, and rather was just an ordinary but quite pleasant man. He was not yet married, and, as Vitalik said, he was in the active search for his second half. "Well, I'll go warm the pie," said Lera when everyone decided that it was time to drink tea. And after a few minutes, the aroma of plums and berries permeated the whole air of the apartment. "And what a scent!" Vitalik and Kirill said almost in a choir. "And what taste!" Before, Veronica often teased us with her baking. Lera immediately spoke, putting the culinary creation of her friends on the table. She did not have time to completely cut the pie into pieces as the bell rang at the door, and the woman, giving the knife to her husband, went to open it. "Edu, son," she said to Dima, who entered the apartment and slammed him in the cheek. "Mom, did you prepare the documents? And what does it smell so delicious?" asked he, smiling to his mother. "I cooked, comin. Hungry, probably from work. We were just going to drink tea. Do you have guests?" "Yes, let's go." Veronica felt how paint was pouring to her cheeks. She wanted to fall through the ground when Dima entered the room. She did not expect that he could appear here today. "Good evening to all." He said he was sitting at the table, whining. He looked very tired. "Where is Alice?" "She went to the club with her friends," Lera answered, pouring tea for her son. "Hi, Dima," said Vitalik and introduced his colleague's son. Having lined up opposite Veronica, Dima put a piece of pie on the plate. "Did you bake it?" he asked her, remembering her how she used to often tease their family. Veronica felt that it was getting redder when Dima, slightly frowning, looked at her. His look was unkind. It seemed to her that now the lightning would fly out of his eyes. "Yes," she replied, trying to take away her madly knocking heart. She wanted to crawl under the table and hide. From those very berries, he cynically smiled, continuing to look at her. And Veronica barely kept the remnants of self-control. From them, she lowered her eyes, unable to hold this look any longer. "I love your pies." He bit off a piece of pie and instantly closed his eyes with pleasure. Delicious." To Veronica's great happiness, having finished the tea, Dima said goodbye to everyone and left, leaving her side with an angry look. Seeing him again today, the memories fell on her again with force, and before our eyes again became the paintings of that crazy passion with which they had not given up on each other for so long. With great difficulty, Veronica was able to switch and continue the unbidden conversation with her new acquaintance. They need him tomorrow, but not this, thought Veronica. Maybe he will come for them tomorrow, she asked her friend, not wanting to take the folder. Yes, you live in the same house. Do it for 5 minutes, insisted Lera, and Veronica, although took the documents. On the way, Kirill told Veronica different funny stories, but she almost did not listen to him, thinking only about the fact that she will have to. We're going somewhere tomorrow, Kirill asked, stopping near her house. Tomorrow I agreed to meet a friend, said Veronica. They were really going to go out and walk in the park and sit in a cafe. Then maybe for a week? With pleasure, she answered, rewarding the man with a smile. Where would you like to go? He asked her. Veronica shook her shoulders. Well, then the choice is mine. Kirill left the car and opened the door and gave her hand. See you later, he said without letting her out of his hand. See you later. Veronica carefully loosened her hand and headed to the dressing room where Dima lived. She stood at the house for a few minutes, not deciding to dial Dima's apartment number. When a man with a dog came out of the dressing room, she immediately sneaked inside. She took several breaths and exhalations, convincing herself that nothing would happen between them this time. Having gathered her thoughts, Veronica finally pressed the call button. Dima opened the door not immediately, but when he saw him, Veronica immediately realized that she had awakened him with her midnight visit. He was surprised to see Veronica and said, and she had dried up in her throat from the look on his half-naked torso. You forgot your papers, she said with a slightly hoarse voice, stretching her folder. Exactly, he said. Cool. He invited Veronica to go into the apartment. Just take your papers, and I'll go, she answered, continuing to stretch the folder that he immediately took. You behave like a child. He sighed, said, Don't you think it's stupid to run and hide from me? I don't run and don't hide, she answered, stepping over the threshold. I've already told you everything. Come to the kitchen, we'll just talk. Just don't touch me, she said right away. Are you afraid that you won't be able to resist again? He smiled a little, without touching the Veroniki and fingers. What is your opinion? She smiled in response and, after going to the kitchen, sat down at the table. Dima was located opposite. He looked closely at her, as if he was studying. The date was apparently unsuccessful. Since today my parents decided to introduce you to this Kirill, he asked. But this is none of your business, she replied sharply. Why do you need him? Asked Dima, without taking her eyes away. I shouldn't have come. Veronica got up from the chair and was about to leave, but Dima blocked her way. Let me pass. I don't understand you. Why are you pushing me away? Now is not the Stone Age. You want me no less than I do you. Veronica took a step back. This is wrong. There will be nothing between us. I just want to leave. Let me go, please. She almost begged. Dima came closer, and Veronica pressed against the wall. You promised that we would just talk, she whispered. We talk, standing just a few centimeters from her. I'm not touching you. Veronica looked him in the eyes, and her heart jumped out of the chest again. The earth left under her feet, and her head was spinning. Now, most of all in the world, she wanted to be in his arms again and give up the passion that burned her. I want you, said Dima, tilting his head to her ear and his cheek. Veronica felt a shiver in her whole body again. He looked at her again, and his lips were so close. Veronica closed her eyes, expecting him to kiss her now. But this did not happen. When she opened her eyes again, he looked at her again. You still want to leave? He asked. Yes, she barely heard her. I'm lying. Dima smiled slightly and left her. Veronica realized that she couldn't take a step, continuing to stand by the wall. Go, I can't hold you, he said. She spat on the nearest chair and took a few breaths. Dima came up and stretched her hand. Help? He asked. Having put his hand in his hand, she got up from the chair, but her legs seemed to not listen to her, and she stood up as if in a trance, unable to move from place. So you still want to leave? He asked again, looking into her eyes. No, she whispered, forgetting that she gave herself the word to stand in front of him this time. The smile shone on Dima's face. He took both of her hands and put them on his chest. He himself grabbed her waist with his hands. What am I doing? She grabbed his neck with her hands and pressed against him with all her body, continuing to look into his eyes and not wanting to repeat what had happened between them not so long ago. Nothing bad, he replied, finally tilting his head to kiss. And Veronica, I touched his lips, experiencing incredible bliss and dissolving in these feelings, which had completely swallowed her. Veronica woke up with a smile on her face and stretched. She opened her eyes, but Dima was not there, and just a minute later she heard the key turn in the lock and how the front door opened. She got dressed and left the room, catching the aroma of fresh coffee coming from the kitchen. Seeing Veronica, Dima immediately came up to her and smacked her lips. Good morning. Do you want coffee? He asked. Yes, thank you. She replied with a shy look. While you were sleeping, I went to the store. He put a box of Butch in front of her. Your favorite. Veronica was very surprised because so many years have passed, and he remembered what cake she loves. Thank you. She smiled slightly. What are the plans for today? Asked Dima. A meeting with Tanya, and in the evening I need to cook something. Mom will be back tomorrow. From Egypt. They were resting there with Tanya's mother. And when you free yourself, will you find time for me? Dim, why is it all this? Veronica sighed heavily. She suddenly felt disgusting again because she was doing this to her girlfriend. It was even scary for her to imagine what would happen if she found out that Veronica was sleeping with her son. And she also understood that he would not give her what she wanted. Children, confidence in tomorrow. Because we both want this, he answered, pouring her coffee. I want serious relationships, family, children. I'm not years old to waste time in vain. Dima's smile disappeared from Dima's face. So you're wasting time with me in vain? You realized what I mean. Veronica, Why do you think I don't want the same thing? In your age, they usually want only what we did at night. Thanks for coffee and for the cakes. Veronica got up from the chair. I'll go. Wait. If you think I only need this, you're wrong. And what do you need? She looked at him surprised. The same as you. Veronica laughed nervously. And what's funny here? Dima was very unpleasant to see such a reaction to his words. Lera and Vitalik represented their faces when you told them that you wanted to have a relationship with me. I should not ask anyone for permission or approval, especially since I have normal parents, you know? You will not go far with one passion, sighed Veronica. You are too much for everyone. You are knocking your head, and this prevents you from seeing obvious things. He sighed. Relax and try to live with your feelings. Dima, I can't do that. Too many buts. These notes were invented by myself. Let's go somewhere together somehow. Where do you want to go? Where do you say? I just don't have much time right now. I have a lot of work. Sometimes I come home at midnight. I don't know. She hesitated. Dima came up to her and kissed. Please, don't get too carried away, he said. But Veronica got carried away to the fullest, confused by what she had heard. I will go, she said. Okay, I will wait for you in the evening. He kissed her again before she left. Dima saw her confusion and fluttering, and her thoughtful look said that she was constantly thinking about something hard, and all you need is to simply trust your feelings and do what you want, especially if they both want the same thing. Dima was also stressed by the appearance of this Kirill on the horizon. He was completely out of it now. Tanya was not there yet, and Veronica sat on the bench in the park. She put her head back and put her hand to the forehead. Dima did not leave her thoughts for a minute. Why are you so upset? Tanya asked, which Veronica did not even notice. I'm waiting for you, she answered and got up from the bench. Well, tell me, how are you? She figured out her passions. They hurriedly walked down the path. If only, sighed Veronica, I was at Dima's again that night. Tanya's ringing laughed. Oh, I can't with you. She hardly said it. She said the mistake again. And how many times do you plan to make such a mistake? I want to finish it and I will finish it, Veronica confidently said. Having weighed everyone's for and against, she still made such a decision. Whether it will still be, Tanya did not stop laughing. Kirill invited to go somewhere with him. They are whispering with a clink, I hope they will. With Dima, except for passionate nights, we still can't do anything. And I need a serious man and serious relationships. You'll chase two hares, but you won't catch any of them. Why did you think that Dima was not serious? He is a self-reliant boy. Where is he serious? Alice said that he came here because of the girl. And this girl is always cheating on me. And she also says that he also needs relationships. She also wants a family. But I don't see any girl except you. I think he has no one else. Look, of course, at yourself. But it seems to me that nothing will work out with you with this Kirill, but with Dima, it could work out. Tanya smiled, looking at her thoughtful girlfriend. Yeah, until she finds herself younger, I know her like that. Here is my ex. Veronica sighed heavily, remembering her ex-husband. We were the same when I went out for him, and already a year later, I began to miss the women. It's better to be older, and definitely not a son friend. But not all are as hairy as he is. And that John runs around with women. It doesn't depend on age. And all your problems are from the fact that you are thinking too much, digging into everything, instead of just enjoying life. What's the difference whose son he is? After all, I see that he is not indifferent to you. I don't want to do another stupidity. But you look at everything through pink glasses. You are guided by only feelings. That's it. Let's talk about you better. Well, I'm not as interested as you are, said Tanya. I wonder how your Yaroslav and son are doing there. Tanya agreed to tell about her husband and son, but this did not help Veronica at all to get rid of Dima's thoughts. When she was released, it was p.m. She looked out the window. Dima's car was standing at his dressing room. No, I'm not going, she said to herself. Turn on the TV, sitting on the couch. After sitting like that for minutes, she got up from the couch and went to the corridor. And after another minutes, her fingers pressed on the home screen of Dima's neighbor's dressing room. When Veronica went upstairs, Dima was standing by the elevator, leaning against the wall and crossing his hands on his chest. He knew that he would come. Smiling, he told Dima, pulling her to him. You are so self-confident, she said. Yes, I am. He was happy to tell her, attracting Veronica to his apartment. I decided to work a little at home, he said, and came up to the laptop. Literally a couple of minutes, and I was all yours. Veronica sat on the couch. Well, that's all. He closed his laptop and sat next to Veronica. Do you want to eat? No, I already had dinner. Maybe we should watch some movie? Maybe a movie. Which one? A comedy, she answered. Dima turned on the movie. Do you want ice cream? He asked Veronica. I will, she answered. Dima went to the kitchen and in a minute gave Veronica a sugar tube. He immediately printed it. Here you go, darling. He gave her an ice cream and sat next to her on the couch, putting his hand on her shoulder. Thank you. Veronica was again surprised that he remembered such little things. Throughout the entire film, Veronica could not understand why Dima still did not come to her. They were sitting, leaning on the back of the sofa, and he continued to hug her slightly. The film was not watched so much since they were talking more about all sorts of neutral topics. Dima told about his life in Moscow, about work. They remembered a little of the moments from the past, and Veronica suddenly realized that they no longer perceive him as that year-old boy, seeing only a man in him, which caused her so many feelings at the same time that she could not give them a suitable definition. I'm too early to get up, said Dima. It was already the first hour of the night. You also need to go to work tomorrow. I suggest you go to sleep. He gave her a hand, and together they went to the bedroom. Slightly kissing her in the lips, he said good night, and squeezing Veronica in her arms, closed her eyes. He was really going to sleep. Good night, said Veronica, surprised. She was comfortably sitting in his arms and also closed her eyes, realizing that she was not at all disappointed that this evening there was no stormy passion for them, and it was good that he was just next to her. In his arms, she felt as if she were in a house, protected from any bad weather. And then he brought Veronica to work. See you in the evening, he asked. I don't know yet, Veronica answered, suppressing the word yes, which almost jumped out of her tongue. Her smile did not go off her lips all day. How good it was for her! Even that night, when she just slept on his chest, when he prepared breakfast for her because no man ever did this before. Kirill called her. Hi, how about the promise date? He asked. Veronica completely forgot that she promised Kirill to go somewhere with him. Tomorrow at 6 o'clock, she replied, and as if she had woken up from the dreams, returning to reality, again remembering that Kirill was much closer to her than Dima, and that she must start dating him. Tell me the address. Veronica gave him her work address. As agreed, Kirill arrived at 6 and took Veronica to the nearest restaurant for dinner. They sat there for a couple of hours talking on different topics. She was pleased to communicate with Kirill. Her heart beat smoothly. It was calm. No passions were in her soul. What are the plans for the weekend? He asked her. I don't know yet. She replied, maybe we should meet? Let's go to some cultural event. I would go to Diva Island. Veronica suddenly remembered that she wanted to ride the carousels for a long time. She didn't want to go alone, and she didn't find a company. Kirill almost grumbled and immediately smiled again. Veronica, these are children's fun, and we are already adults. I wanted to invite you to the exhibition. It will be a weekend. One very talented artist is exhibiting. You will like it. And then you can go to the ship and swim in the sea. And after the restaurant. What do you think about this? Of course, Veronica was not an art critic, but she liked the fact that Kirill invited her to the exhibition. After all, this characterized him as an intelligent man who is connected to culture, and who is not deprived of romance. Because he also wanted to ride a boat. Okay. On Saturday, Veronica replied to him, because Dima had to work on Saturday. Kirill brought her home, and Veronica thought that such a man was needed for the family. Her mind repeated this again and again. In addition, Kirill did not even try to stop her, did not drag her to bed from the first meeting, which told her about the seriousness of the intention of that. When she left his car, she saw that Dima's car was not there yet, and she thought it was good. She was not going to go to his car. She was trying to think about Kirill. After talking to her mother a little, she went to her room, and then she got a phone call. The number was unknown, but she probably answered. "Hi, I'm already home. Will you come?" Dima asked. And when Veronica heard his voice, she felt that inside her everything was shaking, and the heart immediately started to beat harder. Apparently, he somehow recognized her phone number from Lera, she thought. "I'll come." Of course, she ran away from her, and she immediately began to gather. "Where are you looking at night?" asked her mother. "To my girlfriend. I'll stay with her for the night," her mother said, when her daughter was no longer home. Dima was waiting for her at the elevator again, and immediately locked her in the embrace as soon as she approached him. "I missed him," he said, and kissed her in the lips several times. They went into the apartment, and Dima hugged her again. "I haven't had time to take a shower yet. Maybe you can leave me some company?" He smiled, and in his eyes again the fire of desire was burning. And Veronica's heart was freezing from this look, because in her soul the same flame was burning, which the mind could not extinguish. "I was not in the shower yet either," she said with a smile. The streams of water rolled down on their naked bodies. His hands gently caressed her heated body, and the lips did not tear off from her lips. That her heart simply cannot stand such a sense of overexertion, which fell on her again, as it seemed, with even more force than before. "Oh God!" she whispered, pressing her whole body against him, and it was hard to breathe. Veronica could not imagine how she could refuse this crazy passion, and understood that she would hardly ever wish for another man the same. "What about going somewhere on Sunday?" asked Dima, and gently kissed the one lying next to him, Veronica, on the shoulder. "Maybe we should go to the Diva Island?" she asked. "Great. Come on. I haven't ridden a carriage for 100 years. Veronica stretched and put her head on his chest. She didn't want to get up at all, but it was time to get out of bed. Dima brought her to work. "Until the evening?" he asked. "Until the evening." Veronica, who was waiting for this evening with impatience, answered. Dima arrived late, so after having dinner with him and chatting a little, they just lay down to sleep, limited only by a kiss. And Veronica really liked that they have such nights. And on Saturday, Kirill came for Veronica, and they went to the exhibition, which did not impress her at all. And Veronica wanted to leave as soon as possible. But Kirill insisted that all the pictures should be watched, and she followed him, hoping that there were not so many pictures left. But Veronica liked the ride on the boat, as well as the dinner in the restaurant. "Maybe we'll go to my place?" Kirill asked when they left the restaurant and looked at Veronica, hoping to hear a positive answer. "I'm not ready yet," she answered, a little confused. Veronica looked at Kirill and thought, again weighing everything against and against. She liked to talk to him, and she liked this calmness next to him too. He saw her as reliable. With him, as it seemed to her, she was confident in the next day, unlike Dima. "Sorry for rushing the event, but I really like you. Veronica, I have serious intentions, and not just that. And I hope that we will have a relationship. I need a little more time," she answered. "Please don't rush me. I can't do it so quickly." The man agreed, sighing, "When we will see each other again. Let's be closer to the middle of the week." Veronica understood that the moment was coming, and Razum was shouting again. "Come on, make up your mind. It's not so soon. I would like to see you again earlier. For example, tomorrow." I can't tomorrow. Let's do it on Monday then. Without giving into the details, she replied. Then until Monday. Kirill kissed her hand goodbye. Coming home, Veronica thought about the past day, about the fact that Kirill is quite a nice man. She felt that he was the quiet and calm haven suitable for family life. On Sunday morning, Veronica went with Dima to the... It was so wonderful to feel like a child again, riding all kinds of carousels. She was constantly laughing, enjoying life. It was easy and good for her. You'll have a sugar cotton? Asked Dima at Veronica's. Yes, she replied, trying to remember when she last ate it. And Dima hurried to the kiosk where it was sold. Here you go. He stretched a huge, colorful sugar ball on Veronica's stick, and she, with great pleasure, bit off a piece by piece from it. You're all over the place, said Dima, laughing. He took out a pack of wet wipes from his pocket and carefully began to wipe the traces of sweet cotton from her face. Veronica looked at him and understood that she had never been as good to anyone as with this man. Let's ride a boat? He asked her when he finished wiping out the last piece of cotton stuck to her cheek. Of course, she agreed, and, holding hands, they headed for the pier. It was a wonderful day. Veronica even thought it was the best in her life. Having picked up pizza on the way, they came to him in the evening. Veronica felt so happy, and she didn't want this day to end. I'm leaving in a couple of weeks, Dima said when they were sitting at his house making pizza. To the new apartment? She asked. Yes, almost everything is ready there. He suddenly looked at Veronica seriously. You will go with me? He asked. And Veronica almost got depressed, hearing this question. You suggest I move to your place? She asked. Yes, I would really like that. Dima, I told you that I need something else, not just to live together. And your parents, Veronica answered seriously. I remember. Dima smiled and bit off another slice of pizza. Everything will be fine with us. Just believe me. I promise you won't regret it. I don't know, Veronica sighed heavily. Just say yes. I promise to think. She said, catching herself thinking that she would really like it. She was completely confused, not realizing what to do. Her heart was screaming, yes, yes, yes. At that time, the mind continued to say no. On Monday after work, she still met with Kirill. They walked around the park a little and had dinner in the nearest cafe. It was also on Wednesday. I can't do this anymore, said Kirill. If you don't like me, then tell me. Friday. Suddenly she answered before leaving him. She finally decided. Perhaps after getting close to Kirill, she will finally get rid of this incredible attraction for Dima. And then lately their relationship began to go too far. This scared Veronica. She again thought about his parents, was not sure about the future next to him. Kirill was impatiently waiting for Friday. He even went home a little earlier from work to prepare everything, and then went to pick up Veronica. Please. He took Veronica to the room where a small table was covered, on which lit candles, giving the atmosphere around romanticism. Veronica felt tense. She sat down at the table and smiled at Kirill, who began to pour her a glass of wine. Seeing her tension, Kirill decided not to rush the event, but sat down opposite her, trying to entertain the conversation. She looked at him and almost shook her head, as if she wanted to remember the sleep she had when she agreed to go here. What am I doing here? Who am I trying to fool? Only Dima was in front of my eyes. Veronica suddenly remembered their trip to the Devo Island. Those nights when they just slept in a hug with each other. How he prepared her breakfast in the morning. How he wiped her face from sugar cotton. After all, she was fine with him not only when they were in a rage, but always when he was just nearby. And now she just wanted to be next to him, but not here with Kirill. After all, this calmness that she felt next to him was nothing but indifference. Kirill. Veronica suddenly knocked over the man sitting opposite her. I'm sorry, but we won't be able to do anything with you. Kirill changed his face, with a dismay, looking at Veronica, who immediately got up from the table and headed to the front door. "And why did you suddenly decide that way now?" he asked. "I love another person," Veronica answered, not understanding how she did not realize this before. For some reason, only now it suddenly became so obvious to her. "Please open the door. And once again, I'm sorry." Kirill laughed. "What?" he asked through a laugh. "So, why did you take me here so long?" "I'm sorry, please. I just got confused." Kirill got up from the table and came to the front door, next to which Veronica was standing. Having opened the door, he looked at the woman who had been talking to him with anger. "Another woman in my place would do such a thing?" He did not agree, and Veronica quickly jumped out of Kirill's apartment. "Get out, fool!" Finally, she heard. Veronica exhaled when she went down. She called a taxi and called Dima, but the subscriber was out of the reach zone. Dima promised his mother to come over to his parents' house for dinner after work. He wanted to tell them about Veronica, about his feelings for her, which have not passed for many years. In those 7 years that they have not seen each other, his pain and passion, of course, have gone. There were women in his life, but none of them managed to take her place in his heart. Perhaps he was single like his father, who loved only his mother all his life. Dima decided to return to St. Petersburg, from which he ran to Moscow 7 years ago, realizing that at the age of he had absolutely no chance of being on her side, because Veronica did not even notice how much he loved her. Then she was going to get married, and he ran to another city, away from her, wanting to forget. Now, when he was an adult and an independent man, he finally had a chance to win over a woman he had loved all his life. When he saw Veronica at the birth of his mother, his feelings intensified with new strength, and he also noticed an interest in himself on her part. And when they were left alone, he just couldn't keep these feelings under control anymore. And now she wished him no less than he wished her. It remains only to achieve her love. And Dima was sure that he would make it. Tomorrow he was going to buy a ring and make a proposal to Veronica, and also confess in his feelings, because Veronica persistently did not want to see them. "Dima, how is work? Why are you always late? You also work on Saturdays?" asked Lera's son, with an appetite for her boiling cutlets with fried potatoes. "It's not long, they just opened." "Then it will be easier, Mommy," he answered, smiling. "What's up with the mystery bride?" Lera smiled. "More on this later." Dima winked at his mother, smiling mysteriously. "Intrigued? But I see you look happy, and this is the most important thing." Lera looked tenderly at her son and sighed. If only Veronica could get along with Kirill. "I really hope that she will finally be happy too." Dima was surprised to see his mother. "Are they dating?" he asked, and a smile immediately came out of his face. "Well, yes, they've been on dates several times already," she replied. "Leraus doesn't worry about his girlfriend," said Vitalik and looked at the clock. "I think at the moment they are just about to grow up." Well, can you be more detailed?" Lera looked at her husband with curiosity. "She didn't tell you, did she? You women like to discuss such things, don't you?" "She didn't tell you anything. Tell me already." "So Kirill took her from work today and took her to his place. Romance and all that. You understand in general." Well, finally Lera exhaled, "Great news." "Here it is," Dima thought, and squeezed all the strength from the glass with the juice he held in his hand, even not paying attention when he cracked and many fragments were cut into his palm. "Oh my God!" Lera screamed, seeing blood dripping on the table and a glass crushed by her son. "Dima, how are you?" asked the father. "Vitalik, bring me a quench of water." Dima shook his hand and smiled at his mother. "I don't understand how it happened," he answered. "Can I stay with you today?" "Of course. I'll put you to sleep in the living room." Lera took her son's hand and began to gently wipe it with a towel, pulling out the glass fragments that had been absorbed into his fingers. When the mother finished and took out the last piece, tying his hand with a bandage, Dima went to sleep. He turned around and closed his eyes. The pain in his hand was nothing compared to the pain that was now tormenting his heart. All his hopes fell in a few minutes of talking to his parents. Dima's car was not there, but Veronica knew that today he would be at work. She dialed his number again, but the subscriber was out of the zone again. Veronica went home, deciding that tomorrow she would tell him about her decision to move to him. And Lera is not a wild beast, and maybe she will be able to understand her friend. What is important is that she loves Dima and wants to be with him. The next day, she dialed Dima's number again, but he was still turned off or off the network. Veronica looked out the window, and what was her surprise when she saw him near the car? Dima put some boxes in the trunk. Veronica quickly jumped out of the apartment and headed to him. "Hello, what's the box?" she asked, continuing to shine with happiness. "I called you, but your phone is turned off." "Hello," he answered dry, not even turning around, and continuing to put these boxes in the trunk. "I move, and the phone is discharged." "Dima, something happened?" Worried, Veronica asked, not understanding why he was talking to her, and a smile immediately came off her face. Nothing happened. Having put the last box in the trunk, he turned to Veronica, and she immediately noticed that his look was somewhat alienated. "Dima, you asked me to think about moving. I agreed to move to you," she said. Dima sighed. "I don't need it anymore," he said. Veronica felt how the computer was coming to her throat. She was in a terrible panic. The fear of losing him completely was killing her soul. She was still looking into his eyes and saw only indifference, as if she was seeing another person, whom she didn't know at all, because Dima looked at her completely differently. "I don't understand." She barely made it out, trying to hold back from crying. "Listen, Veronica," he calmly said. "I loved you very much, didn't I? But you didn't want to notice it. You didn't need it. Enough of me. I'm not a boy to constantly run after you, persuade, and prove something. You said you wanted serious relationships, but at the same time you needed me only for sex. The rest you were looking for somewhere else, not wanting to accept it from me. I don't want anything else. It's time for me." Dima closed the trunk. Veronica seemed to be stunned. Everything inside her burst. She was insanely hurt. She couldn't and didn't want to believe these words. "Is everything over between us?" she barely whispered, no longer able to hold back her tears. That's how he answered, sitting behind the wheel of his car. Tears rolled down the cheeks of Veronica. She came home and, falling to the bed, burst into tears. His words, again and again, they sounded in her head, and she refused to believe them. It was now when she realized that he loved him. He left her. "Is that really all?" she whispered and cried even harder, not wanting to accept such a truth. She realized that Dima had learned about Kirill and could not imagine what to do to bring him back, and if it was possible to do it at all. Veronica was lying in bed, crying. She was glad that her mother had gone to visit her on the weekend. After all, she didn't want to see anyone. She didn't answer the phone, although Tanya and Lera called. She would have answered only one call, but Dima didn't call her. His last words were constantly echoing in her ears, from which her heart was torn to pieces. Veronica couldn't imagine what to do now. When the doorbell rang, she crawled out of bed and looked into the eyes. Lera was standing on the doorstep. Thinking for a few seconds, she opened the door. "Lord, Veronica, what's wrong with you?" Lera sighed, entering her friend's apartment and seeing the whole thing in tears. "I've already called you. Why don't you answer? What happened?" Lera hugged Veronica. "Because of Kirill? Huh? What did he do?" Veronica wiped her tears and dazed. "Not because of Kirill," she said with a hoarse voice. "Come to the kitchen." "What are you doing here?" "I was packing some things. Dima has already moved. Now he will bring us what I have packed." Lera barely finished talking, as Veronica immediately burst into tears again. Having sat next to her friend, "Zaya, what's wrong with you? Come on, calm down, and tell me what happened to you." Veronica raised her red, weeping eyes, and looked at Lera. He left me and does not love anymore. She barely heard. Kirill? What does Kirill have to do with it? Veronica moved away from her friend. And who left? Lera did not understand anything. Veronica came to the sink, and after rinsing her face, she sat down again next to her friend. The one I love no longer loves me, she answered. Will you drink with me? If that's the case, come on, Lera agreed, and Veronica took a bottle of martini with juice and poured it on herself and her friend in a full glass, immediately emptying her own with a gulp. You'd better drink too, she said to Lera, and she did a few sips without any hurry. Veronica, I don't understand anything at all. Come on, tell me, it will be easier for me. It won't. Veronica drank another glass. Lera, you can choke me, I don't care anymore. She gathered her courage to confess to her whole friend. What else? Tell me already. Veronica finally said, Lera, I love your son, and we have many times with him. In general, we had sex, we met. Lera opened her mouth, but could not say a word. Her eyes were rounded, her face turned white. After sitting for so long, she raised the glass, splashing its contents on the table. Her hands were shaking, but still she drank the remains of martini with a slurp, and immediately poured more. You! Lera drank the second glass with a slurp. Veronica continued to look at her friend, waiting for the sentence. So, is it because of you then? Lera suddenly coughed. How did I not see this? She closed her face with her palms and shook her head. What is it because of me? Veronica whispered, snorting her nose and not understanding what she was talking about. You were just getting married because of your hair, and Dima left before the wedding. I was so confused then. Why did such a spontaneous decision come up? Lera sighed again. Oh. And on Friday this glass. Now everything is clear. Lera, what happened on Friday? Veronica whispered. Lera looked at Veronica, and she thought that her friend would now come at her and scratch her eyes. And how long has it been? She asked, raising her tone, leaving the question unanswered. Since the day you were born. Veronica drank a glass of martini without diluting it with juice and grumbled. So you were dating my son and also with Kirill on a date? Lera saw that something was wrong with Dima when he crushed that glass. But I couldn't imagine that her friend was to blame for this. Veronica nodded, looking down. I've known you for so many years, but I only found out today that you're such a bitch. Lera threw another glass of martini into her. Lera, I love Dima. Really, I love him very much, but he disliked me, and I had nothing with Kirill. She loves. Lera smiled. When they love other men, they don't go to romantic dinners. And how do you know about dinners? Veronica laughed. After all, she didn't tell Lera about it. From the camel. Kirill told Vitalik, and he shared this information on Friday with us. With you? Veronica again felt unbearable pain in her heart, understanding how Dima found out everything. With us? Why are you with him? I powdered the guy's brain, and now he suffers. I didn't powder it. I thought I could switch to Kirill, and it would be better for everyone. I was afraid that you would hate me if we were together. And now you're not afraid to admit it? I'm not afraid because of my fears and prejudices, I lost him. Now at least cut me. I don't care anymore. It doesn't matter if it hurts. The phone rang to Lera. It was Dima. Yes, son, she answered. Mom, I've already loaded everything. Where are you going? Go without me. I'll come by taxi later. What's wrong with your voice? Where are you? While they were talking, Veronica came to the window. She slightly moved away from the curtain and saw that Dima was standing near her car in the yard. Tears flowed again along her cheeks. I have things to do. Dima, I'll come later, go. Well, okay. Lera looked at the sobbing Veronica again. Enough whining, she uttered, pouring for herself and her friend a glass of martini. Here, drink. Veronica immediately drank, and all to one, and hardly breathed. Lera, I feel so bad. But what can I do if I love him? She looked at her friend with pain and sorrow, and she really wanted her to understand her. Let me at least come to my senses from such news. Lera sighed, emptying another glass. Her tongue was already tangled. I can't live without him. Veronica felt her head spinning, and everything was floating in her eyes. After all, she didn't eat anything, only drank. I'm a bad mother. Suddenly Lera uttered, pouring another portion of alcohol. Why? Asked her Veronica. Because I was blind. He loves you for a long time, and I didn't notice it. Lera exhaled and drank again. For a long time? Veronica immediately emptied her glass. You're a bitch. Lera, judging, looked at her friend. Veronica again got angry. I don't love you anymore either. Lera got angry and drank again. Leraca, forgive me. I love you and I love him, but I'm such a fool. And it's good that he left you. We don't need fools. Veronica got even more angry. Don't be angry. I can't. Drink. Lera stretched out another full glass. Leraca, what should I do? Veronica drank and lowered her head to the table. Lera looked at her friend, trembling with tears. Are you asking me? And don't yell, I say. It's me, I feel bad. We've already got something together. Lera said, I'll go home to digest the information. Lera, walking, went out into the corridor. Calling a taxi, she left her friend. Veronica looked out the window at how the taxi took Lera away. She poured martini for herself, although she was already completely drunk. And after a while, she fell asleep right behind the table. Dima came to the apartment of his parents. There was no one at home. He unloaded the things he had collected for his mother and was about to leave as Lera appeared on the doorstep. He looked at his mother with surprise and smiled. Wow, Mom, where did you get so much? Lera spat on the chair and, trying to take off her sandals, fell off it. Dima hurried to her and lifted her from the floor. Mom has everything under control, she said, smiling to her son. I see. Continuing to smile, he took off his socks from her. The door at the entrance opened immediately, and Vitalik and Kirill entered the apartment, about in the same state as Lera. Dima looked at his father's colleague with hatred. Although was he guilty of something? No, but he still hated this man. Oh, mother, where did you get such a beautiful one? Asked Vitalik's wife, spitting out her embrace. Hello, son, and I'm reanimating a friend, said Vitalik, showing Kirill to be shaking. Let's go to the kitchen, Kirill. Vitalik took a bottle of cognac and 2 glasses. Take the third one, said Dima, sitting at the table with them. He wanted to strangle this Kirill. Son, you don't drink, right? Lera, who was shocked, exclaimed. Today I drink, Dima answered. Mother, shall I pour you some? Vitalik asked. That's enough for me, Lera said, watching her son. She noticed how hatefully he looked at Kirill. What else does this woman need? Kirill, who had been thinking in silence, said. I don't know, Kyriak, Vitalik answered, pouring cognac. He looked at his wife. Your girlfriend is still a bitch, of course, he said. Yes, Lera agreed, and the men looked at her in surprise. Dima drank cognac and grumbled. It was very difficult for him to listen to the talks about Veronica, but he did not show the look. So I went to her and so, one date, another, third. I understand that the woman is decent. He doesn't jump into the bed right away. Kirill waved his hand and gave him a glass of cognac, all the watered-down glass. Hearing him, Lera smiled nervously. Dima missed 2 glasses in a row and grumbled. He suddenly wanted to drink. He hoped that it would help to dull his pain. What happened? Kirill, Lera suddenly asked. Did the friend not tell? Kirill looked at his friend's wife. We haven't talked to her for a long time, Lera lied. I mean, a romantic dinner, a wine, and she herself agreed to everything. He made an accent on the last phrase. I tell her something, so to speak, and I am discharging the atmosphere. She was all tense like a stretched string, but I think the person is worried. and she suddenly gives out such a thing. Kirill laughed and waved his head. Lera continued to watch her son. It was completely obvious that he was barely holding back so as not to attack Kirill. She remembered how 7 years ago, finding out that Veronica was getting married, Dima got pale and walked on his own. But then Lera did not understand what was the reason for his sadness. Not at all, connecting it with her friend. And when he came to St. Petersburg, he avoided meeting Veronica in every way. He even once said that when he grows up, he will marry Veronica, but seriously, Lera did not perceive this, only laughing at his sons. She defended herself now for being so unmerciful to him, not noticing that he has been suffering for many years from love for her friend. Vitalik slapped his friend on the shoulder and poured cognac on it. "Son, don't drink so much." Lera looked at her son and shook her head. "I'm fine, Mom," he answered, although it was not so. "Here, Dima, tell me." Kirill suddenly turned to his friend's son. "Did you get thrown by the women like that?" "No," he answered dry, making another sip of alcohol. "Son, at least you eat." Lera carefully put a plate of sausage and cheese on the son. "I'm lucky. So I'm sitting like this, and I don't understand what's wrong." And she says like, "I'm sorry, I love another." Kirill laughed nervously. Dima raised his head and looked at Kirill. "What is she saying?" he asked. Lera noticed how her son's view changed. "She loves another." "Well, isn't it stupid?" It was necessary to fry her as follows, so that it was not. Then Dima broke off his seat and, grabbing Kirill's breasts, took him off the chair. His eyes sparkled with anger. Lera gasped and threw herself at her son, like Vitalik. "Dima, what's wrong with you?" shouted the stunned father. Kirill tried to resist, although he barely stood on his feet. "I hope you didn't touch her finger, or I'll kill you." Lera, stroking her son on the back, begged him to let Kirill go. Kirill said, "Take your hands off. I didn't touch her. I opened the door, and she left." "Why are you so angry?" Kirill asked them, trying to free himself. But Dima suddenly let him out, and he fell on the floor. Vitalik helped Kirill get up and put him on the chair. "What was it now, son? Why are you throwing yourself at people?" He looked at his son, not understanding such a too violent reaction. "Nothing," he answered, drinking a glass of cognac. "Let him watch his tongue." "Kiryuk, you were wrong." Vitalik immediately said, "Watch your tongue." "But," he said. Oh, Lera sighed. "Pour me a cognac," she asked her husband. Kirill tried to get up from the chair, but immediately spat back. "Oh, Lera, why did you push me, such a woman?" Kirill sighed heavily. "So I didn't know that she loved someone else." Lera looked at her son and almost smiled, but he did not see it, plunged into his thoughts, spinning in his hazy alcohol consciousness. "My friend is called," said Vitalik. "You can't do this to men, you can't." "Oh, that's it." Lera waved her hand at her husband. "Enough of discussing Veronica. Change the subject." Dima got up from the table and said, "I'm home." He muttered, and rocking from wall to wall, he crawled into the corridor. "What home? You'll stay here," Lera said, rushing after her son. "You're barely standing on your feet." "Okay, I want to go home," he said, trying to put on sneakers. "Mom, call a taxi." Lera went to the room where her phone was lying, and having called a taxi, immediately called Veronica. "Why don't you take the phone for a long time? Go down in minutes," she said to her. "Why?" she asked, and Lera immediately realized that her friend was crying again. "Stop whining already. By the way, how are you there? Are you sober?" "Partially. Why?" "I have a gift for you. I want her to be ready in minutes." "What a surprise!" asked Veronica, but Lera already hung up. Lera returned to her son. "I'll go with you," she said, trying to get into the barefoot. "Why are they so uncomfortable to dress?" she screamed, not getting in. "Lera, where are you going?" asked her husband. Dima is barely standing on his feet. Or can I let him go alone? Then I'm with you. You're not standing very well either. Vitalik bowed to his wife and son. Everything is under control, Lera answered, holding on to the door jamb. You, friend, reanimate. In general, we ourselves. I will not go back. I will remain in court. Veronica stood, holding the porch of the porch near her parades, breaking her head over what kind of gift her friend had prepared for her, from which Lera literally fell out. But immediately she got up and, shaking, opened the back door. Help me, come on, she said to Veronica, and she saw a drunk man, Dima, in the back seat, who, unlike Lera getting out of the taxi, was tired on his feet, but immediately shook, and Lera hugged her son on one side, holding him so that he would not fall. Veronica immediately approached on the other side and almost fell, throwing his hand at his shoulder. What else did you drink? Asked Lera, noticing that she was not sober than she was a few hours ago. A drop, answered Veronica. Lera, where is he? She immediately turned her gaze to Dima, because she had never seen him drunk. We have, she answered. Then Dima looked at Veronica. The sharp smell of alcohol hit her nose, although she herself was no. What are you doing here? He said. Dima, I live here. She replied, looking at him with her eyes full of tears. He looked at the house. Exactly. What am I doing here? I don't live here. Go, honey, said Lera, wiping the sweat off his forehead. You're heavy, son. They came to Veronica and, taking off Dima's shoes, put him on the bed. He turned around, took off his pillow, and closed his eyes. Let's go have some tea, said Lera's friend. I've never seen him like that, said Veronica, including the teapot. Me too. It's all because of you, you bastard. Lera, please don't be so angry at me. Okay, pour the tea. You think he still loves me? I wish you saw how he attacked Kirill because of you. Of course he loves her, but I don't understand why. She looked at her friend with a sad face. To Kirill? He drinks with us, too. And also because of you. You got men on the wrong side. Lera, I feel so bad, and you too. Veronica sighed. What if Dima doesn't want to see me when he wakes up? If you make my son suffer again, I will strangle you for sure. Veronica smiled slightly and put her hand on her friend's hand. Lera, I love him. I have never loved anyone like that. What can you do? Love yourself. She would have told me everything as it is. Oh, we have known each other for so many years. Did you really think that I would not understand and would not support? For me, his happiness is the most important thing. Who are you with? It's up to him. You're not a stranger to me. I've been worrying about you for so many years. Veronica hugged Lera. Thank you. Okay, I'll go. Lera got up from the chair. So you can stay with me. Where are you going now? No, you don't have to deal with me here. But when you figure it out, then call. I'm in the neighboring parades. I'll get there. Veronica knocked her friend on the cheek for a farewell, and she went to her room. Covering Dima with a blanket, she lay down next to him and gently stroked him on his hair. What a fool I am, she whispered. Veronica was very afraid of the morning's coming, because she did not know at all how he would react to what would happen in her house next to her. But the words of her friend inspired hope that everything could still be fine with them. Veronica woke up and immediately looked at Dima. He was still sleeping, and she sighed with relief. She was still in a state of... Her head was cracking, her whole body was breaking. She went down to the pharmacy located in the neighboring house and bought antipathyline. When she returned home, she saw that Dima was still sleeping and went to the kitchen, immediately taking one pill. Veronica was nervous. She didn't know if Lera had woken up, but I decided to call her. I'm dying. She answered the phone and said. Similarly, I ran to the pharmacy, bought some pills from Pomelia. I'm waiting for them to work. Is Dima still sleeping? Yes. Can I take you a pill? I have one. I'm a precautionary. I'll crawl to the bag. Lera got up from the bed. That's it. I don't drink anymore. When will you go home? Oh, I don't know. I'll lie down again. I'll fall apart into atoms. We'll call later. The fridge is empty here, so I'll come later to eat with you. Of course, come. After talking to her friend, Veronica decided to cook something to distract herself from the anxious thoughts and shorten time. Dima really loved her pies, and she decided to bake his favorite one with strawberries, and also to cook homemade shawarma, as she has the products for it. Veronica periodically went into the room to see if he woke up, but Dima was still sleeping. When the shawarma was ready, and she just put the pie in the oven, she went into the room again. With her eyes slightly open, Dima grabbed his head with his hands and sighed heavily. "How bad?" he said. And Veronica immediately went to the kitchen for water and a rescue pill, which personally helped her a lot. "Take it, please. It will be easier." She stretched him water and a pill, looking at him with a full-fledged look of suffering. Her heart was beating so fast. Veronica was very afraid that Dima would leave, sending her far away. "Thank you." He sat down. Dima spat on the bed again and closed his eyes. He said, "More water, with A." He smiled a little and immediately grumbled from a headache. "Now I'll try to get to the kitchen." Veronica smiled and sighed with relief. "I can bring her here to you." "You lie down," she answered. "I'll crawl to the kitchen," he said, having a hard time breathing. Veronica warmed up the shawarma for herself and Dima. While whining, he went into the kitchen and sat down at the table. And what a smell! He took a piece of shawarma and bit it off. "It was delicious," she asked. "It was awesome," he replied. Having eaten the shawarma, he sighed peacefully. "Much better now." "Thank you, I'll go take a shower. I remember where the towel is." Dima got up from the table and left the kitchen. "There is also a new toothbrush in the cabinet," Veronica shouted to him. "Oh, thank you." She began to get nervous again. What if he takes the shower and leaves? She thought. Dima left the shower in one towel and returned to the kitchen, occupied with the previous place. "Now even better. Give me the pie." He smiled, and Veronica took the pie out of the oven and began to cut it into pieces. Dima watched her, continued to smile, and when she finished, Tom took her hand and suddenly pulled her to himself, putting her on her knees, and she just gasped out of surprise. "I was drugged to alcoholism," he said, sticking his nose into her hair. In the soul, Veronica again trembled. She felt insanely happy. "Forgive me, please. I'm such a fool," she whispered, grabbing his neck with her hands. "Kirill said that you ran away from him, saying that you love another." "Can I know who?" he asked. "You," answered Veronica, looking at him with tenderness. "I love you very much." Dima got up from the chair and with Veronica in his hands went to her room. "And how about the pie?" she asked, laughing. "And the pie will wait," he answered, covering her neck with kisses. He leaned over her, and Veronica saw in his eyes that unfulfilled desire from which her heart was so trembling. "I hope your prejudices no longer torment you, and no more doubts?" Quietly he asked. "Only those words tormented me, which you said to me leaving, and nothing else," she answered. "I was angry, and it hurt me very much. Veronica, I love you, and love since the first time I saw her. But then there was nothing between us, and now we can be together, and I really want it. And I want it. When you left me, I realized how much I love you." Dima immediately kissed her, and Veronica again dissolved in her feelings. And this time the mind was with these feelings in her mouth. Lera called Veronica several times, but she did not answer. After waiting for another half an hour, she called again. Finally, she said, when she finally answered, "You have been making peace for a very long time, and I am already dying of hunger here. Come, I will feed you," said Veronica, and again put her head on Dima's chest. "And she has known for a long time?" he asked, stroking her back. "Yesterday I found out." Veronica remembered yesterday and smiled. "So she came from you?" "We all had a good fight yesterday, of course." Dima laughed. I don't remember myself like I was yesterday. Veronica smacked Dima in the lips, got up, and put on a robe. She will come now. And then the doorbell rang. Lera looked at her angry friend and smiled. I see that you have made up, she said, passing by the kitchen. What aromas! Let's feed the hungry mother-in-law already. Lera sat down at the table. To the shawarma? Asked her Veronica, knowing that Lera, like her, adores her after the drink. There's also a pie. Give me everything. I'm hungry like a beast. Dima dressed up and went to the kitchen. Hello, Mom. How are you? He asked his mother and sat opposite her, putting Veronica on his knees in his own way. She replied, Now we will sing, and it will be even better. She looked at her son and, seeing him so happy, was happy herself. Yes, because of Lera's friend. She was also very happy, because she had never seen that her eyes were so bright as they are now, when she looked at her son. When will we introduce our bride to Dad and sister? She asked Dima. I think next weekend, he replied, smiling. Great, but I think it's better to prepare them in advance. I'll take it on myself. Lera bit off a piece of shawarma. How delicious. Here's happiness. You will now be more often teasing me and your pies. Lera smiled at Veronica. Lera, for you anything, she answered. Satisfied, Lera began to get ready to go home. I'll go see how Dad is doing. Is he alive? I'm with you, said Dima. We need to take the car. He kissed Veronica and left the apartment with Lera. Son, why didn't you tell me anything about your feelings for her? She asked while they were driving in a taxi. Could it have changed anything in the past? Dima looked at his mother. I doubt it. Lera sighed. Well, now why? First, I had to get her, and then I was going to tell you and my father. Dima, I'm very happy for you. Lera kissed her son in the cheek. Thank you, Mom. I always knew you would understand. For me, your happiness is the most important thing, son. And I always wish the same for Veronica. Veronica waited for Dima. Her smile did not go down from her lips. And she was also happy that she did not lose her friend. When will you move in with me? He asked Dima, returning home to her. He looked closely at Veronica, and this time he did not see any signs of confusion and careful thinking on her face. She smiled and immediately hugged him behind the back, pressing against his chest. At least right now, she whispered. And will you marry me? He asked, and Veronica immediately looked up, and in them, without words, it was possible to read the answer to this question. Dima took out the ring, which he bought on the way to her house, turning the nearest jewelry store. Yes, Veronica put on the ring and immediately pressed against it again. She was overflowing with happiness, and no more doubts were tortured. She had never been so confident in her decision. Then let's pack your things. Dima smiled happily, tightly pressing her to himself. The next Saturday, Veronica and Dima hurried to visit Lera, where no one was already surprised who his fiancé was. And I, by the way, guest, said Alice when everyone sat down at the table. And I somehow know, although when Dima rushed to Kirill, the thought flashed. Come on, we already know Veronica. We could say our man. Well, when is the wedding? In 2 months, Dima replied, kissing Veronica in the temple. After the wedding, when they finally stayed alone in the hotel room, Veronica and Dima hurriedly began to tear off their clothes from each other, and their lips seemed to freeze in an endless kiss. I love you, Veronica whispered, dissolving in her feelings and the person who today became her husband. She still wished for him, and from his kiss her head went around as the first time. Now she knew for sure that their passion was just a manifestation of the love they felt for each other. Finally, you are mine, said Dima. It seemed to him that he would never be able to get enough of this woman, and he did not want to get enough of her. He had dreamed for not so many years and thought that his love would remain unanswered, but now she belonged to him and loved him. He was absolutely happy. Veronica hurriedly walked in the park with a stroller. And so did I. Tanya approached her with a big, beautiful gift package, which she immediately gave to her friend. How pretty! She looked into the stroller, in which Veronica's daughter slept. Thank you, she answered and hugged her friend in the cheek. Where is Maximka? Tanya asked about her 3-year-old son, so that Lera and Vitalik would not be bored. It will make them a good time there. She laughed a little. Dima will soon have a vacation, so we will visit there too. Veronica always loved Lera's dacha, next to which there was a double forest and a lake surrounded by pines, where they used to go all the time to swim with their children and friends. Could she then assume that that boy, who always splashes water into her from the lake, the strawberry and the carefully bringing plate for her in the evenings, when they were sitting in the besetka, will become her husband after so many years? You look great, by the way. I've been wanting to ask you for a long time. How did your passions lie there after almost 4 years of marriage? Tanya distracted her friend from her memories. I wouldn't say that. She smiled mysteriously, remembering that they sometimes make up with their husbands. Veronica was surprised that over time their passion did not go out, and she still had her heart jumping out of her chest when looking at him, and from his kiss the earth went out of her feet. Tanya looked at her friend, who was all lit up with happiness, and thought that it is not always worth listening to your mind, because sometimes it is the heart that can give the right advice, and the mind can be lost. You need to trust your feelings, without thinking ahead. What can be, what cannot be, and not to hammer your head with prejudices, but to live and love. And it's good that Veronica made the right choice, because she would not be as happy with Kirill as she is happy with Dima. At their wedding, Tanya saw what eyes they look at each other, and somewhere even a little envied by such a dusty feeling. And how good it is that their love won all doubts and prejudices. Prejudices, attempts of the mind to take up feelings, uncertainty in the future, fear. What will others say? Should you refuse love because of this? After all, mutual love is so rare. Here everyone decides for himself. Support this video with a like if you like this story. Subscribe to the channel so as not to miss new stories. See you soon.